Hello and welcome back to the X-Files Revisited. We are on to Season 1, Episode 14, the politically correct title of Gender Bender. Brian, do you have any memories of Gender Bender?
You know what? I enjoyed this one when I was, back in the Season 1 days when all we had was Season 1.
So, when you were younger, you liked Gender Bender?
I get the feeling this is going to be used an awful lot during this episode. I enjoyed this episode. It's one that I played probably more times than it deserved. And I think we'll get into the reasons for that, as we get into it. But yeah, it's not quite lived up to it. It's been a while since I've seen it. I saw it for this episode. I went back and viewed it, and I was quite surprised by the level of change in my mind towards this episode.
That's a good choice of words. A level of change in your mind. This thing, I think it's dated.
Yeah,
I think that's probably its major issue. But like we said, we'll get into it. This one I actually remembered once I started watching it. This is one that I did have some memory of once it started. So let's just get stuck in and we'll see what discussions pop up. So the episode opens with a club scene, and there's a kind of general douchebag type guy who's been rejected. And as you do when you're rejected, you decide to use the horoscope machine in the middle of a club. Which I don't really know how I feel about that. I don't think I've ever seen like a horoscope machine in a club, and it's just weird. And then there seems to be lots of shots of eyes during this opening scene as well.
Yeah, a lot of close-ups on like drawing you into the eyes, as if that's like the window to the soul, I guess.
Pretty much. And then a woman approaches the man, kisses him and seduces him, and then it jumps to them back at a hotel room, just finished in the throes of passion.
Yeah, he didn't want anything to do with her until she touched him with her thumb. She has this thing where she touches them with her thumb, and then all of a sudden, they're suddenly intoxicated. But he was like living up to his kind of douchebaggery when he basically, because like he was going after the obvious kind of pretty girl in the nightclub who didn't want anything to do with him. But when someone who, not unattractive, but is kind of like, I don't know, I guess middle, if you want to be that shallow, he's not interested. So he clearly sees himself as a big player. But he gets won over by her touch.
It certainly does. And after they've had their fun, the girl gets up and kind of backs away, watching him into the shadows of the bathroom, where the man seems to go into convulsions and dies in a horrible fashion. And then out of the shadows emerges a man who puts on the man's clothes and leaves.
Yeah.
And it's probably quite a fairly interesting opening. You're not really too sure where it's going to go from here. I suppose it's kind of gave you one mystery, but took away another one that you could have had, throughout the episode.
It's definitely intriguing. It's definitely intriguing. I mean, based on this setup, I wouldn't expect to go where we go in the episode. Like I would kind of imagine that we're going to stay within the city streets for this one, that it's going to be kind of like a lot, almost like the policing side of the Law and Order type of TV show, but obviously without the courtroom drama side and with a bit more paranormal activity thrown in. But where we go after this is definitely far from where I was expecting.
I mean, that's completely believable, because I hadn't, when it takes that left turn, you're just kind of like, whoa, where did that come from? But I guess we'll get to that. So we get the theme music, and then we're into the episode as such, with Mulder and Scully investigating the death
Can I just say, there's a line of dialogue that Scully uses here that I find quite incredulous, which is they're looking at the bodies. They're looking at the body of this man, and that she's hearing the story about how he had apparently picked up this girl from the nightclub, or walked out with this girl from the nightclub, and she says, "It's hard to imagine this day and age someone having sex with a perfect stranger." Were people really that coy in the 90s, in the early 90s?
No, I don't think
I can't imagine that they were.
It's one of those strange things. It comes into play later on, I suppose, but they do this fine line where they, every now and again, they try to sort of sexualise Scully. They never really do it with Mulder as such, but you always feel it's that fine line with it. You never know. The next episode she could be getting ready for a shower or something and down to her underwear yet again.
Well, you just wait till season 2 when we get to see Mulder in his Speedos. That's something that plays out several times across the series from that point on.
That sounds very horror-centric.
They get some good comedy mileage out of it, I'll tell you that much. There's also something else that shows how much this is dated, is the way in which they talk about pheromones.
Yeah.
As if it's like a new science, which back then I guess it was, but they talk about it here as if no one should know what they are, as if no one's ever heard it. They're telling the audience, well, there's these things called pheromones, and it's like, hello. So yeah, that really dates the episode.
I mean, every bit of information you need on pheromones is in a Lynx advert nowadays.
Yeah.
So in this scene, we've got a sort of course detective who says that a call's been sent out for this exact demo. Somebody's been looking for it, because Scully's kind of questioning why they've been called into this seemingly standard case. And I think we'll just assume for that it's Mulder, that we know that Mulder's put out this sort of like call for anything of this MO to come in. It just makes you wonder how many strange sort of things has he got out there at different police agencies,
He just puts the feelers out on everything, doesn't he? And hopes that something comes back.
It seems really strange. So then we cut to Mulder showing slides of several people who have died in the same way. And I think they mentioned that the colours are walking aphrodisiac. and this is where it really takes a turn, where they mention that a certain material has been found in the nail wounds of these victims, and it can only be found at a certain place amongst an Amish farm.
Oh, not Amish. That's where we've got to just make the distinction there. Clearly, they are Amish. That is what they are going for. But they're not on the same page. Yeah. They're this kind of cult or religious sect, if you will, called the Kindred. Clearly, like you say, modelled on the Amish. There's no doubt that when you look at these, you think Amish. But yeah, definitely not quite. Yeah,
well, I'll need to try and be careful with my notes, because I've got them referred to as Amish all the way through these here.
Yeah.
That's just me projecting onto it, obviously.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've seen a few programmes about Amish people, and I've got to say, I've got a lot of respect for that way of life. And I definitely, while on the surface, I think that's what most people would see. When I look at these people, it's definitely not what I equate them to in any real sense of the term.
I must have missed that during this episode, because maybe it's just me assuming. I just assumed that they were Amish. I don't know. Did they mention that they are?
They don't at any point mention that they're an Amish community. They call them a religious sect, a religious group that keep themselves to themselves, and they're called the Kindred. But they reel off a few kind of things about them that would again imply the Amish connection. The whole like living without technology, without modern technology. Obviously, that's a big thing in the Amish community, but yeah, I think it's one of the things about this episode that I find to be a shame, really, because you look at a film like Witness. That came out around, when at a time when the Amish community wasn't really that well understood, and it did do quite a lot to kind of bring a bit of light and a bit of understanding onto that community. So I think this episode, in many ways, kind of undermines the work that was done by Witness, and kind of turns perception on Amish people, I guess, into, well, this, weird kind of cult, freaky alien people. So,
right. So I've got it in my notes, Brian. So we're in Amish town, and the shop owner says that they're doing voodoo. He's got pictures of them all behind the tills, and Mulder's asking them general questions about them. And then they roll into town, and Mulder and Scully approach them to question them, and Mulder follows them inside a store, and Scully stays outside to talk to one of them.
Yeah, Mulder goes in, doesn't he, to talk with the people in the shop, and Scully talks to the lad, but then she kind of gets the stare from him, like the lustful stare, and then he touches her hand in the same way that our gender bender from the beginning did, and then she seems to kind of get a little bit intoxicated with him until she's kind of interrupted, or they're interrupted by the women who come back out of the shop.
And Scully's kind of not really feeling herself. She's a bit off. She can't really remember just what happened there, or she's a bit out of sorts.
Yeah, it's like she got spaced out a bit by the guy's touch. But she also kind of leads her to suspect that there's more going on. She obviously feels something there that, like she says, there's something up there, Mulder. And I love his retort when he says, "I've been saying that for years,"
Yeah. So Mulder and Scully venture up to the Amish compound, and they're walking about just through the woods because they run out a sort of road to travel on with their car, and all of a sudden they are surrounded by these people. And the one thing I noticed in this scene is, one, the score was terrible. I was really alerted to how poor it was, and the colouring in it was really drab and brown and grey and not really like popping out at you. It was really quite a sort of muted palette colour. I thought, I don't know why it just caught me in this scene, but it just struck me as being kind of meh.
It felt quite cheap, didn't it?
Yeah, very.
It's like we've seen more effort from the art department, the DP, and all that lot in previous episodes. I mean, even the last episode, Beyond the Sea, when we had some really nice lighting in them abandoned warehouses, and then you go to this, and it's like, oh, all right. Although, saying that, there is a scene later on that I will give props to the lighting department for, but we'll get there when we get there.
When you're talking about. So, Mulder and Scully are invited up to the Amish house and they get to pray and have dinner. And they want to show pictures and videos to these people, and they don't want them. In fact, my note here is, and it's quite articulate, try and follow it, Brian. Weird guy is super weird. I think that's the guy that starts arguing for like over arguing. He instantly goes from 0 to 10 on the anger scale. And then there seems to be like again in my notes, they've got an Amish off where they start to like sort of bounce scripture at each other until one backs down and realises they're in the wrong.
Yeah.
And then we have the weird person at the end of the table who's been coughing and spluttering over all of their food. He seems to pass out, and they won't let Scully help the guy. The trained doctor, they just won't let him out, and they just carry him out of the room.
Yeah. Like, I hate this scene.
Yeah.
I hate it. Like, in my notes, I've got dinner and prayer time, anger, atonement, choking, a bit over the top. It's all so very over the top. Like if these people were trying not to give themselves away, they've done a damn bad job at it. Because it's just like, it's so OTT. It practically puts a neon sign above their heads saying, suspects, check us out, investigate further. Because, not a good scene at all.
No, not particularly. Like I said, the guy that really wastes it for me is the one that gets super angry, super quick. And just, you think all these people would be kind of singing from the same hymn sheet, if they're trying to cover something up, they would be, come in, we'll pretend everything's good, we'll get you the hell out as quick as you can, but they don't. They seem kind of disjointed. And then having the guy that's obviously in death throes at the dinner table while the FBI are there seems like a rather odd choice to have.
So contrived, isn't it? It's literally a big contrivance. It's like, we need something to happen that allows Mulder and Scully to be able to want to investigate further. This is it. It's lazy writing.
And just from a personal standpoint, I'm sitting watching this guy cough over all this food. And I'm like, please don't eat it. Please, oh my God. Have you seen this guy spluttering all over this food? Anyway, and then we kind of jump back into a nightclub again. And the colour...
We don't just jump back into a nightclub. From the look of the set design, we jump back into the same nightclub. Even though this is supposed to be in a different city entirely, a completely different part of America. And it's like, this is literally the same set they used in that opening scene. I would put money on it.
I need to watch it carefully if I ever watch this again, just to see if I see a horoscope machine in the background somewhere. So the colour's on the prowl, and the girls are not interested until, yet again, he does the little hand trick, rubbing the thumb against her hand, and then all of a sudden, she's into him. Which probably led me to why I retitled this episode kind of The Rapening, because it just seems to be that it's like sexual assault all over the place. It seems to be that you go up to somebody, they're not interested, that's not good enough an answer. It's almost like a precursor to date rape kind of thing. Anyway,
it's troubling.
Troubling.
The episode does play kind of as an analogy, I guess, of date rape. Because they are essentially drugging these people,
absolutely,
and having one night stands with them, and then killing them.
Because these people, it's a chemical imbalance. They don't want to be with this person. It's just that they cannot help themselves because of the effects that they're having on them. Which like I said, I found it kind of troublesome when I thought about it that way. And then we're back to the Amish town, and Mulder and Scully are on the path to their car. They talk about how strange everybody was back at the house, how there was no children there, and Mulder decides that he's going to go back for a look. And obviously Scully's not going to stay out in the middle of the woods herself, so she's going back with them.
So Mulder goes down to the cellar.
Well, they go back to the house first, and it's in darkness. And then they start to hear chanting.
There's the ritual in the barn, isn't there? Yeah, they see the guy being kind of the one who'd been choking, who'd kind of keeled over. They see him being taken into the barn.
Yeah.
So,
and they're kind of watching, and they see them going down. They open these strange kind of storm doors inside, and they go down into this white tunnel. And Mulder decides that it's just too weird for him not to go down there. So he has to do it. So he decides that he's going to follow them down. And there's more chanting, and it's really weird. I think is this what you're talking about, the lighting down here?
Yeah, so when they go down the cellar, obviously while Mulder's down in the cellar, Scully kind of, that guy from the... who she had the little thing with outside the shop, kind of touches her on the shoulder, makes a jump, and then takes her back to his room to have a little chat. So while they're chatting, Mulder's kind of roaming around this cellar, looking at what's going on. But that whole set there, the lighting on it, I really like. It's
fantastic.
Yeah, very atmospheric. Some decent production design in there. Obviously, not a lot of money gone into it, but they've made the best of their resources, and I think it does add a lot of atmosphere to what's going on, I think.
I think it's very weird, and it's like such a strange colour, and the kind of material over the sort of windows that he pushes against and all that. It's all kind of really textured and freaky looking. It really does make you wonder what is going on here.
Yeah. So while Mulder's checking that out, this guy is basically telling her about Brother Martin, or Marty as he calls him. He was a good friend of his, and he kind of basically left because he got a little bit too close with the outside world, a little bit too intoxicated with the outside world, and just went off to pursue worldly pleasures, shall we say.
But then it sort of relates back to the Amish as well, because is it not ram looking or something like that they do, where they get to go out and experience?
Yeah, they do a thing that's allowed though. Like in this episode, he goes off on his own, and they don't kind of want him out there, so to speak. Whereas it's kind of like a walkabout kind of thing. So they set. Once you become of a certain age, you have the opportunity, and this is only within certain Amish sects. It's not right across the board, but some Amish sects do allow their teenagers, once they come of age, to go out, experience the world, and then hopefully come back. Hopefully, make the choice to decide, actually, the world is not for me. I will go back.
So these scenes we're talking about are intersplit with Scully and Mulder in different places. So it goes back to Mulder, who's watching them take the dead body and start to coat it in this strange mud and things in this really weird looking set. And then it cuts back to the sort of Amish dude telling Scully that Marty was a little bit different, and then he whips out some porno mags for them to have a little look at, in his bedroom, as you do. And then down in the sort of weird celery bit, they leave, and Mulder gets to have a little look about.
He sees the guy's eyes open.
Yeah, he jumps in. He ends up in with the body. Is that correct? Because he hears them coming back down.
Yeah,
and the body's starting to change. It's got longer hair.
It's like it's renewing, basically. It's like it's kind of going back to a younger version of itself, and then obviously the eyes flicker open, so the guy's kind of back alive. He's been reanimated, so to speak. And
then the Amish dude is touching Scully's hand.
Yeah. So they start getting it on, basically. So Scully kind of gets the buzz again because he's touching her on the hand, and then kind of leads her down to the bed. And obviously Mulder, who's run from the cellar by this point, he kind of bursts in on them. It's quite convenient that he manages to find the room that they're in time. And
it's the one with the sock in the door handle, or the tie around it.
So it basically finds Scully just moments away from getting down and dirty with this guy.
Yeah. So he grabs Scully, runs out the building straight into everybody who's standing outside the front door in spooky fashion, which is a really creepy scene. And then they just kind of part their ways and let them go. And so we kind of jump back into the nightclub colour again as he stalks another victim.
Yeah, the thing about Scully, right?
Yeah.
With this guy, when he has kind of done his thing on her with the hand, and he's got her down on the bed, Mulder bursts in, and Scully is proper out of it. She literally looks like she's been drugged with Rohypnol.
Mm-hmm.
And my problem with this is that, yeah, okay, it explains why Scully's so eager to do the business with this guy. It kind of lets her off the hook. But we never get this sense with the other victims. Like when they're getting down and dirty with Marty, they're full on aware, or at least it appears they are. They don't look, like it doesn't take away that, yeah, this is the whole kind of date rape analogy thing, because they're not quite in control of what they're doing. But although they're not in control, they always seemed quite energetic, quite up for it, quite, impassioned. You look at the opening scene when the first victim gets it. They've just had sex, and he's well aware of what's going on around him. He's proper trying to tell this woman, wow, that was amazing, that was awesome, that was the best night of my life, before he starts foaming at the mouth and then cops it. But Scully is completely the opposite of that. She looks like she's completely off her face. Yeah. And to me, that was just a bit like, it didn't fit in with the other victims for me, to be honest.
Got to say, I didn't think of it at the time, but now you mention it, it does seem rather suspect. So, once we've seen the nightclub colour again, Marty, it goes back to Scully, who's with Mulder. She seems to be rather embarrassed. I think Mulder says to her at one point, what were you playing at? What were you doing in there, Scully? As if she decided just to throw herself at the guy.
Yeah, and she looks really guilty and childlike during this scene. She just looks like a little child who's been caught with a hand in the cookie jar.
And Mulder kind of explains what he saw in the catacombs, and then it kind of jumps back to Marty in the car with some dude.
Not just any dude, it's Krychek. This guy is basically, he's Michael. I think that's the name they give him in this episode. But like I say, this guy Nicholas Lee, really good actor, really good Canadian actor. He's based in Vancouver. You won't see him in many big kind of films because he doesn't tend to leave his home base in Vancouver. So he's been in a few films that were shot there, like Vertical Limit, that kind of thing. But he does tend to stay there, But I like this guy quite a bit. I think he's a really good actor, really good kind of local actor from that area. And they obviously thought the same thing because they bring him back in season 2, not as this character, but as Krychek, who, of course, would go on to be my personal favourite villain of the whole show. But here, he's a victim, and he kind of gets interrupted. He's just about to get in the act of sex with this woman, with Marty, and a police officer knocks on the window, kind of reminiscent of that scene at the beginning of Beyond the Sea in the previous episode. Yeah. But this time, Marty whacks the police officer, and Michael is looking out of the window and sees that the person he's just been about to have sex with is now a guy, which really freaks him out. And I love the reaction on Nicholas Lee's face. His performance here is totally believable and understandable, and that feeds into the chat that he has with Mulder and Scully.
Well, just to jump back a moment, I think it's when he looks out the window and he sees that Marty is now in male form. It's not even like a male that looks at anything like a female at all. Just wearing those female clothing just looks ridiculously funny. It's such a strange image, but I had a little chuckle at that one.
Yeah, when the guy just goes running off in this like skirt and high heel boots, and it's just like, oh man, it's a bit freaky.
So in the hospital, like you were saying,
so Mulder and Scully are questioning him, and you can see him being really like, sketchy. He doesn't want to get into it, and he's like, off the record, this is off the record, right? And it's just his performance here, I think, is absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's like literally the dude gets a few scenes in the episode, but he does make an impression. So he's talking to Mulder and Scully, and he's kind of he's at the point where he's describing how he looks out the window, and he thought he saw that the woman he was having sex with was actually a man. But it's when he gets to that line and he kind of breaks into this nervous laughter, and it's just that delivery. It's like it cracks me up every time I watch it. And yeah, like I say, it's only a few scenes, but he does a lot with them. He manages to inject a lot of character, a lot of humour, a lot of embarrassment into this character, who, quite frankly, is just, he's an in and out. He's someone they get in order to get some information to move the story along. But I think he injects more into it than this kind of script, I guess, deserves.
Yeah, I made a wee note for that line as well, because it probably wasn't. It was probably just a throwaway line in the script, but it's such a strange choice to have that strange little giggle before he says it. But it works amazingly well, and I think you could have had 100 different actors do that, and he would have been the only one that made that choice to deliver a line that way.
Yeah, like I say, I think there's definitely a reason they brought this guy back for such a major role. And it's because, look at what he's doing with this little minimalist performance. We need to bring him back and give him more. So I'm thankful that they did.
Yeah, so I think after this we cut to a strange hotel room where a woman is talking about being a human, or making love to a human man or woman. And then they realise that they are talking to a dead person, another one of Marty's victims. I don't know how, but Mulder and Scully arrive at this building. Did I miss something?
Yeah, they got some information from when they were speaking with Michael. I can't exactly remember what that was. Wasn't there a cell phone? He used a cell phone. So Marty used a cell phone that had belonged to one of the victims. And doesn't a detective come in and say that they've tracked it or something like that? Or Mulder or Scully drops a line. They track him anyway. They track this guy. But my problem is this scene with Marty talking to his victim or her victim. We hear Marty talking. We see her talking to someone, and then we find out that it's actually a dead person. It's a dead guy on the bed, and all of the dialogue coming from Marty is just exposition, and it's like it feels contrived. It's like we need a bit of inner monologuing going on from Marty, and the best way to do it is to have her act like some kind of coroner from an episode of CSI who talks to dead bodies. Or Will Smith in Concussion. It's just, it grates on my nerves. It's just
just one of those things that just hits you in the wrong way.
It does.
So Mulder and Scully arrive to raid the hotel room. They break in.
I'm sorry. I'm just it's this scene. Again, I think you know where I'm going.
Yeah, is this when Mulder gets incapacitated?
So Mulder gets nailed. He gets kind of knocked against the wall and falls down. And then Scully runs after Marty. She runs past Mulder in the corridor. And Mulder's just kind of sat there against the wall, looking down, and he's just like, down the hall. And you feel like saying, get up, you lazy sod. It's like, what are you doing? You're fully compass mentis. Get off your ass and help Scully. It's just like...
You could almost ADR that to, save me, Scully. Save me.
It's like, once again, Mulder gets taken out like a complete wuss, and it's left to Scully to go after this guy.
Does Mulder eventually get up and start chasing as well?
Well, Scully basically just goes down and chases this guy, and then through some inventive use of lighting, we see basically the rest of the kindred come, grab him, and then suddenly just disappear. They basically just beam away, and then that's. I think Mulder comes out at that point. I don't know. I don't care, to be honest, at this point. But yeah, I think Mulder pops out, has a little chat with Scully, and then we very, very quickly kind of just end the episode on a bit of a bum note in my mind, which is
they go to Amish Town, and obviously
they go back to the kindred home,
and the tunnel down to the catacombs is completely sealed up, and they kind of walk out to the middle of a field, and it is the worst crop circle I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
It's like forget the fact that crop circles have been debunked now anyway, that they know how they're done. Yeah. Pushing all that aside, this isn't even a good crop circle. It's like you say, it literally looks like the worst production design ever. They could have at least hired. So I mean, back then, I guess when they did this episode, they didn't really know how the professionals did it, because there was still some air of mystery as to how they were actually done. But man, it's like you say, it's really rough around the edges.
Yeah, it's poor. It's poor. So, are we done with this one, you think?
Oh, I'm so done with this one. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll just run into my overall. Genderbender starts off, I think it's a little bit dated with the club scenes and things like that. It's not its fault, it's just a product of its time. I think it touches on some interesting subject matter with its analogous nature towards sort of date rape and sort of club culture back then. But I don't think it focuses on that enough, and it gets lost in this kind of strange story that never quite ties itself together completely. It feels like two sides of a tale that don't belong together. You know, you've got the whole Marty side of it, the club scene, the sex, the killings, that, and then you have the kind of kindred, the Amish people. And both of them would have been better separate stories, I think, almost within the X-Files, but together they just really don't work. And there's some heavy-handed scenes, but then there's some really cool production design, and then there's some really poor cinematography, but then there's some excellent cinematography, and it's just not a very good episode all in. I think overall I'm going to give it 2.5 out of 5. There is a couple of things that I do like about it. I think it may be unintentionally funny, but it's not one of the better X-Files episodes. But you know what? It's better than a couple of other ones that I'd choose to watch this before then. Yeah,
I'm looking at my scores for what we've done so far. Mm-hmm. This isn't space level bad.
No.
You know, an episode that I don't ever want to go back to again. But I can't give this any higher than a 2. You know, we gave the Jersey Devil a 2. And I would say Jersey Devil's better than this.
I think I'd rather watch this again.
Just from the entertainment value we got from Jersey Devil, and you know, it at least had that police officer guy in it that I kind of liked, and the Jeff Goldblum, the bootleg Jeff Goldblum. There was a few things in there that I enjoyed, and just because of the sheer hilarity I got from some of the stuff in there, that was funny bad. This isn't funny bad. It's just bad. Like I say, the one shining light in this entire episode is Nicholas Lee as this character Michael, but he's in it for such a short time. I hate all the stuff at the Amish community, you know, as you call it. But yeah, like you say, I'd have preferred it if this had have been a Monster of the Week kind of episode in which they're trying to track this gender bender guy down, but are having real trouble doing so because of his shape-shifting ability. And they just stuck to the city. Play it more like a Tombs kind of episode, a Squeeze kind of episode, but yeah, this was really the wrong way to go. They could have said a lot more, I think, about that nightclub culture, about sex culture, and they just don't. They blow it. Yeah, a 2 out of 5 for me.
Okay, so next up is episode 15, Lazarus. Anything notable about this one, Brian?
Yeah, this is a Scully episode.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah, it's don't expect beyond the sea levels of greatness, but certainly expect it to be better than this one. Now, I think we are actually followed here. The next 2 episodes are Lazarus, which is a Scully-centric episode, and then straight after that we've got Young at Heart, which is a Mulder-centric episode.
Right.
And of the 2, I remember liking Young at Heart a lot better. Mm-hmm. They both kind of go into a bit of history with the characters. So with Scully, you get to see the history, her history a bit with a like an old partner kind of thing, so one of her old friends, and then with Mulder, you get to see one of his past cases come to kind of come back to haunt him. So yeah, that one was the better one for me. But yeah, I think Lazarus is going to be an improvement on this, but from what I remember, it's kind of like a solid episode, but not anything that's going to blow you away.
Brilliant, that's something to look forward to. So I'd just like to thank everybody for listening to this episode, and we will see you next time on the X-Files Revisited.